Admittedly, yeah, this was pretty wild, and I was ready to jump on this like everyone else. But apparently, as it's coming out right now, there's more to this story than what people are letting on.
Well, this was a moment of history. It happened earlier today in France, and a major controversy, too, has now erupted out of Paris. An Algerian boxer shown in the red uniform who failed a gender eligibility test last year has now won an opening fight after only 46 seconds.
It was crazy. Y'all want to see the hit? Now, admittedly, I do really have to be careful because the Olympics are really, really stringent with some of their copyright rules, but I'll try and just show you just like a second of it. Right there. Right there. It was that punch that rocked her. And so what she did now, right afterwards, she goes back to her corner, puts her hands up, tells the referee, I need a second, right? I gotta adjust my headgear. Goes back to her corner, coach adjusts the headgear, he's checking in on her, asks her, hey, are you okay? And then she looked like she didn't want to continue, but she still wrote it out. Went back in, he caught her, I think he caught her with a right. And after that, she put her hands up and just said, yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I think she knew what was about to happen. You're about to get that work. The controversy that we all inevitably knew was eventually going to happen, because now the question comes up of, is this fair to have a biological male in a biological female sport? Because it's one thing to make the argument that someone is losing out on an opportunity. It's another thing to make the argument that someone is being discriminated against. It's also one more thing to make the argument that someone could actually get hurt. And right now, we've gone past the categories of just fair and not fair. We're actually delving into the category of someone is actually potentially getting hurt. And that's exactly why Angela Carini, after 46 seconds, quit. She quit because she knew, had I continued this fight, I can't do anything to defend myself. And I'm worried for my own health. Because as she put it, and I'm paraphrasing here, so pardon me, I haven't felt a punch like that. That was that hard. And I became concerned for my own health. And because I became concerned for my own health, I thought it in my own best health's interest that I should stop. Bowed down to her, bowed down on our knees in the middle of the ring, shed about 5 or 6 tears, and then walked over to her side. And that was that. Now we get to the controversy.
Her opponents breaking down in tears, calling it, quote, unjust. Greg Palcott picks it up from London with more on what happened in the ring. Greg.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, big controversy indeed at the Olympics. A boxer deemed a biological male beating an Italian female opponent, with the Italian crying out, I couldn't take it anymore. Despite failing that gender test by the International Boxing Association and being banned from an international tournament last year,
I think that was the wrong picture that they want to put up.
Algerian 25-year-old Iman Khalif was okayed by Olympic authorities to compete. And apparently today it was a very one-sided fight, with Italian Angela Carini, also 25. After just 46 seconds and several sharp punches to the head, including the nose by Khalif, Carini abandoned the fight, threw her helmet to the floor, stormed off the boxing ring, and in fact went on to say that she had never felt such strong blows in a contest before.
Not surprising. Okay, so that's the controversy. That I just want to get that part out of the way. Whether it's fair or not fair, you can make that argument. I've already made my own position very clear. I do not agree with the fact that those worlds should ever once collide. But, everyone has their own opinion on that matter. And in this case, if that is what was transpiring at the Olympics, then that's on them. Only to follow that up by reading a few more articles, because immediately I started looking at articles, and I started reading about Imani Khalif to understand what kind of situation are we dealing with here. And then you start to get into the weeds, and slowly I have to now ask myself, wait, is this a biological male? Are we dealing with a transgender here? Or are we just dealing with someone who's incredibly strong? Because a lot of the reports that I've been seeing, it would almost suggest to the latter, that this is actually not a biological male. That was the first one that rocked her though. Let me just show you guys one more clip because... But as I stated, the situation is a little bit more complicated than normal because listen to what they say. Women's sports have become a battleground over gender identity issues, as some critics have argued participation in such sports should be limited to people whose biological sex is female at birth. The New York Times reported that intersex athletes, or those with some biologically male characteristics and some female, have also been a focal point of the debate. Khalif is legally a female and is identified as such on her passport, according to multiple outlets. Now, that right there is a little bit curious because legally a female, that can be confusing and misleading, even because what we're talking about in all instances is actually just biology. So we're not talking about legalities. I mean, heck, you could legally change to whatever nowadays, but if it's biologically, this is where things get a little bit confusing. Mark Adams, the International Olympic Committee's chief spokesman, told the Times that Khalif is not a transgender athlete. Adams noted everyone competing in the Olympics women's category has complied with competition eligibility rules. Khalif appealed and called her disqualification from the IBA's World Boxing Championship last year a big conspiracy. This guy is in Paris and I saw this video uploaded, and honestly, I would like some answers other than just people that have a political backing on this one, because why not, right?
Or not having an X chromosome, then please stick around and watch this video to try and learn a little bit about this crazy controversy that's going on in the Olympic world. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Suter, and my goal in this channel is to help teach you about the medical side of the sports world. I'm actually in Paris right now. I've been here for the Olympics the past week or so. You can see Paris outside my window there. It's been absolutely beautiful. But the biggest story the past couple days has been, of course, with women's boxing. The story, of course, is that this Algerian boxer, Iman Khalif, is identifying as a woman. She's in female women's boxing, but there's a lot of talk that people saying she's a male. She's had these previous disqualifications for having XY chromosomes and failed gender testing. And so why in the world are we letting a man compete in a woman's sport, especially boxing? This is
Good question, because now you delve into the realm of someone getting hurt.
not the first time we've seen a big story like this. You might remember this track and field athlete, Caster Semenya, who was a middle distance runner who was disqualified from running certain events because of this whole differences in sexual development diagnosis and picture. This is going to be as simple as possible of an embryology, or the study of how we grow and develop, genetics and physiology lesson, so I can try to open people's mind to some of these challenging discussion points. Our genes are the blueprint for how our body functions and is built and is made. We get one half of our genes from our mother and one half from our father. That means most humans will have two genes for sex. That can be either an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. Now, typically a female sex will have an X and an X chromosome, and a male sex will have an X and a Y. The contents of those chromosomes are what determine how we are going to develop either into a female, talking about sex again, or a male, again, talking about sex. So, classic female sex XX, classic male sex XY. Now, interestingly, whenever we are first conceived in the womb, we all start off and we have the potential for our sexual organs, our gonads, to be either female or male.
Okay.
The presence of specific genes on the Y chromosome differentiate that down a pathway to become male. So, without that Y chromosome turning on the pathway to become male, everybody would go down the female path in terms of their sexual development. So if you have a normal functioning Y chromosome that turns on the pathway to send you down to have male sexual characteristics, male genitalia, etc. That's the basic black and white kind of bread and butter of how things normally go.
Sure, straightforward.
But as you can imagine, there are a lot of possible errors in not only the genetic composition, but also what happens from the downstream physiology standpoint. On that Y chromosome is a specific gene that turns on a lot of the testosterone, the androgen signaling pathways that form the gonads, the external and internal sexual characteristics. So we're talking about the external signs like breast, gonads, etc. versus the internal genetics. With these differences or disorders of sexual differentiation, or DSD, the genetics are XY, so you have that Y chromosome that's trying to turn on the pathway to fully have those male characteristics, but there's abnormalities that don't give the normal male gonads, male hormone profiles. So what you are left with is a very convoluted, very complicated picture of varying degrees of both physiology from a hormone standpoint to external physical characteristics that are what we see when we look at somebody to make us think male or female in the traditional sense. Oftentimes with these athletes, that results in higher levels of testosterone that gives them more of this athletic advantage. But because they have any variety of all these different genetic enzymes, testosterone, hormonal dysregulations and abnormalities, they might not have the exact same external features, or what we call phenotype, that would make us classically think of somebody as male or female. So you can have these individuals who might look more masculine than a female, but whenever they were born, their external genitalia wasn't clearly male or clearly female. And then you can imagine all the stress and anxiety and everything that comes downstream of that when you don't have clearly male or female features. This is not always a black and white thing. And these DSD syndromes, these disorders, are far more common than you would think. These are not like 1 in a million types of things. And if you think of an athletic population where any sort of physiologic advantage might make you rise to the top, there's actually probably a high number of these individuals that are high-level athletes because they have had that boost in their physiology. But it's no fault to them. I really encourage people to try and be open-minded and learn or read more about this, because again, it is not as simple as saying so-and-so has an X chromosome, so therefore they are male. There is a lot of potential ambiguity that is no fault to the athlete or that individual. This is a really nice little review paper on PubMed that talks about all these disorders of sexual differentiation. And if we scroll through, I mean, these are all the genes that play a role. This SRY gene is kind of that sex determining part we talked about with the Y chromosome. That's the main male regulator.
Hold on, let me just get that. The sex determining region of the Y chromosome is the chief regulator of male sex differentiation. Expression causes translation of SRY protein, which mediated testicular development. Okay.
Regulator, but you can have abnormalities in that. I mean, all of these different genetic abnormalities that could result in downstream variation. There is so much gray area in this. And so to simplify the question of this Algerian boxer and say, well, she has a Y chromosome, so therefore she absolutely is male, it is not that simple. It is very, very complicated trying to determine the difference there when you get these DSD individuals. Different sports have different ways of managing this. Track and field has tried to look at some different testosterone levels where you have to be below a certain threshold to compete in certain events that they feel you have a high competitive advantage. But there's no consistency across the sports world in terms of how these athletes are managed and handled when it comes to a sport and differentiation that has been historically male and female. I don't know the answer to this. I'm not going to act like I know the answer for how you handle these athletes who, again, at no fault to their own, are in this really difficult situation where their whole life they have not clearly looked or felt in the classic sense that we think of as male or female. They want to do sports, they want to be athletic. Maybe they're really good at their sports, and so that's a good outlet for them. But then they get further on in life and we discover this thing and we run into these questions of male and female. So think of putting yourself in that woman's shoes. I don't think necessarily that this Algerian boxer is trying to like deceive the system and just win gold medals. But think about being a child and having one of these known, diagnosed differences in sexual differentiation syndrome.
It almost sounds like he's saying that this is transgender in the truest, absolute truest form. Like, not just someone who just merely identifies as, is like biologically going that direction. Like the complications are actually there.
Where you don't look like your friends who are female or male. You feel different because of your hormone levels. How are you supposed to put those people in a box of purely male or female? Again, I don't know the solution, I don't know the answer, but I wish that we all had the intellectual maturity to not just see these headlines, not see the way somebody looks, and automatically assume that just because we are told they have a chromosome, they must be male or they must be female. And again, we're talking about from that sexual side effect, because I think there are a lot of other gender identity things that factor into this as well, with how you're raised and the psychology of it. So it's a very, very complex situation. So the basics, you get one set of chromosomes for each parent. Classic males have an X and a Y, classic females have an X and an X. All of us start down the same pathway with potential to be either female or male from a sexual organ, sexual characteristic standpoint, but the presence of some genes on the Y chromosome send that classically down the pathway male. However, abnormalities in that Y chromosome, potentially an extra chromosome, I didn't even mention that, Klinefelter, where you can have more than just those two chromosomes, send us down these pathways where we have abnormal phenotype, meaning abnormal physical characteristics, and abnormal physiology that don't clearly put us in the male or female box. That's it for the video. I hope this was helpful.
Okay. All right. So from everything I gather, it sounds like this is a biological female that has the X and Y chromosome and that has an elevated level of testosterone. That's what this sounds like to me. But from all of the pictures that I've seen, because there are even pictures of this person, Imani, right? I'm going to say she in this case. There's pictures of Imani when she was younger as a female. So if that's the case, elevated level of T, X and Y chromosome, but somehow biological female. The doctor, you heard him, I just watched the whole video, you heard him say that there are complications that happens, and that's exactly what this really does seem to be reflecting, that this is simply just a complication, an anomaly, a mutation in the gene pool that is not normal to what you would consider to be normal, but this is simply just an outlier, one of like maybe a million, 1 in a million chance that this would ever happen. Well, this is the one. So, and just happens to be very good at boxing. Good call on the other fighter, not continuing on this fight, because that other punch looked like it was really gonna hurt. And you saw the two rocks, right? The one right here and then the one right there. Yeah. Let me know your thoughts. Is this doctor just dead wrong? If you do have a medical degree and you have some profession in this field and you know something about this, please offer some advice. I'm going to be reading into this because this sounds a hell of a lot more complicated than what I'm understanding. It does sound interesting though. And right now I can see all the pundits, J.K. Rowling, Elon Musk, everyone jumping on top of this, saying it's a biological male. I don't know. I really don't know. To some degree, I don't even care, because, hey, you know what? It is what it is. This seems like it's one of the ones that is technically really confusing. But let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. Please let me know your thoughts in regards to what you think about this, whether this is fair or not. Do you think this person should have been banned from the Olympics from competing with actual biological women? Or do you think, no, this person is a biological woman, just with the X and Y chromosome and with a high level of testosterone, but not with the parts, the gonads, as he put it? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and I will see you guys again on the next one. Be easy, y'all.